Thank you, councillors. Welcome to the June council meeting, Wyong Council. Declare the meeting open. I call for apologies. I think we have two, Councillor Jackson and Councillor Taylor. Someone happy to move those two apologies? Councillor Derrick, Councillor Kinsey. We don't further put that. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Moving on to the minutes of the last council meeting held Thursday, the 26th of May. Someone happy to move those minutes? Thank you, Councillor Walker. Councillor Bruce. Councillor Walker.
I'm just happy to move the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone have any comments, questions regarding those minutes from the May council meeting? Everyone happy with those? In that case, we'll put that. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Moving on to disclosures of interest. Any of those being noted? So Councillor Derrick has noted a non-pecuniary interest in the Bristol Danger Finance Administration's report, item 3. Is there any further pecuniary or non-pecuniary interest that we need to have noted? Be nothing further. Put that. Oh, we don't need. We just note it down. There are no mayoral minutes. We'll move on to item 6 on our agenda, the report of the committees. The first of those being the Roads Committee held on Wednesday, the 1st of June. Looking to remove of that, Councillor Whiteley. Second, Councillor Kinsey. Councillor Whiteley.
Obviously, everybody would be aware of the road trip in the last road committee meeting. Personally, thank everybody, staff, and those that, even those that weren't on the road committee. Just to background you, obviously Gary took the minutes bouncing around in the back of his bus, and so I'll just preempt those. Some of this is in the minutes that you've got in front of you. Sylvester gave us an indication on road widths and against the traffic count volumes, which was like the normal road width to crossed over with traffic count volumes, which was received by the committee. We obviously saw the lack of edge maintenance and on the first part of the Corinda Road leaving town once we go past the racecourse showground, and obviously that's been is on our plan to do something about. We pulled up at the Gradually Lane turn-off. We had some discussions, local landholder input in some of those areas, and words coming out of my mouth to be a bit lighter on our feet, taking local help in some of these difficult areas to deal with. We then moved down through the Marra to all the way up to the Kyangrai Road on the main access to Nyngan, and we inspected the last 8 k's of the Kyangrai Road, which has never been revamped since 30 odd years ago, whereas the rest of it has. We saw that. We saw a ramp down there that's caused a few problems. So I think Bluey's been put into that. We then travelled to the camp, for the workers' camp, and inspected that, and were generally pleased with the infrastructure that the boys are going to live in when they're down that way. One thing that's also not on the minutes, we inspected landholder areas down there where there is no fenced roads, and all the wet weather that has caused a lot of damage. There was discussions with the infrastructure manager re the legalities of that and what could be done with that. We went from Gibson's Way at the end of the water near the bird thing and saw the difficulties that will have to be done if that's ever going to be all weather. And we pulled up for a photo opportunity at Marra School, and it was mentioned that our previous manager of engineering, Rowley, had promised the Marra School a couple of loads of gravel which haven't been delivered, and then travelled back to town. I'd like to thank Mr. Fuller publicly for driving us around. So Mr. Mayor, that's my report to that.
Thank you, Greg. Councillor Whiteley. To Councillor Whiteley, are we in council going to see a listing of the various road widths so that we do know over time where the roads committee is going with? They'll say a regional road should be this width. Are we going to see that? Is that the plan? No, it's not.
No, the discussion was just centred on information received and noted, and contained within the report was the kind of estimated pavement widths and seal widths that are expected.
And are they in line with the expectations?
Very close.
Councillor Whiteley.
Yes and no. The two roads that the roads committee, they can speak up for themselves, but me personally are looking at is the road from, the name of the past Nevertire going south, and the Corinda and the Old Warren Road. I understand we've gained some funding to extend the Old Warren Road another 2 kilometres. It's approximately 2.4 kilometres to the Inawena front gate. But
1.2 to 1.5 kilometres.
that's as far as you can go. That won't quite get us to Inawena, but I'm not an engineer, but the structural integrity of what's underneath those roads for that far is pretty good. The rest of it's, in a rain event, is impossible.
That's a valuable exercise, and thank you, the Roads Committee, for going to that. Councillor Brewer, and then Councillor Brewer's Councillor.
A couple of brief ones. Can I please be added to the list of people present, if that's okay, since I moved a few things in there. And secondly, on the day, or maybe some other time, we talked about the vehicle-activated speed signs, and I thought that they were activated at 60 k's, but I've been playing around with them lately, and I've been through them at 40, 50 and 60, and they still illuminate. If they're in there as a safety issue to trigger at 60, which is what I thought they were doing, they certainly trigger much slower. So I wonder whether that's a design feature or just what we thought it was doing, because it triggers much slower than the 60 kilometre. And I don't really care either way, but if 60 is a safety feature to slow people down, then it won't be doing it because it triggers it much lower than 60. That's really all I've got to say. And I'll echo Councillor Whiteley's comments on the Old Warren Road. I've been driving that a fair bit lately. The new grading is sensational, but it's already breaking down in parts from heading towards Nyngan past Inawena Ramshed sign. There's a couple of patches there where the road's been pulled up nicely, everything's pretty good, but really soft, almost back to bull dust already in a short amount of time. So we need to prioritise something, resheeting or something on that road, because there has been a vehicle on its lid there in recent years along that road, and there's a couple of patches now that will soon be holes. That's just the structure of that, what's underneath that road.
See, Andrew, you said supplying some notes, so just take it on notice.
And it's easy to see what I'm talking about. There's a couple of patches there that sort of on the left-hand side of the road heading west that are already sort of dangerous, and it's dry. So,
thank you. Councillor Bruce, you're all right? Yeah.
Yes.
In terms of Councillor Brewer was in attendance.
Yeah.
Councillor McCloskey.
Previous Mayor, just again in relation to the the Kennebar Road or the road going past Enorina. I was on it the other day myself. A couple of things. The two signs that were at the end of the previous bitumen end are 3 kilometres short of where they need to be now. They're relating to, they're an actual gravel road sign, no through road sign when they're wet, and there's 3 or 4 kilometres of bitumen thereafter. Also, the recent maintenance drainage has been undertaken down there. There appears a padfoot roller was used down there. So I just wondered why a padfoot roller was used, and the dimple marks from the pads are now evident in the surface, as opposed to a flat drum roller, smooth drum vibrating roller.
Again, I think Bitumen Engineering Services taking some notes, and we'll look at that. I certainly couldn't answer that, Councillor McCloskey, but I'm sure you'll get it. You have a comment yet?
Yeah, just a question. What road was it?
Sorry?
Which road was that?
Which road? The other Warren Road,
Yeah.
Star Road 65, or Warren Kennebar, or Kennebar Lincoln, or,
Star Road
yeah, down past here anywhere.
Gross. And it's now it's the old one. Yes, thank you. And Councillor White?
Just one thing, the Ningachire Council from where we end has just resheeted their section of the same road with gravel from, I presume, Ningman. Could I recommend that we keep an eye on that when how that's standing up to the resheeting of the section in the middle of the same road for this. So where we end at the Reedy Corner turn-off, the Ningachire has resheeted. So we've got a bitumen road coming. We've got about 8 to 12 k's of untrafficable in the wet, and then Ningen is resheeted in gravel, and that's causing concern for some of the residents.
Hopefully, in the near future, that Old Warren Road, Shire 65, will be a reasonable priority for gravel resheeting. We've got $400,000 in our gravel resheeting program in 22-23, in the draft program, and from what we gather, there will be an announcement soon for round 4 of the fixing local roads, and our priorities are, we've already put $867,000 of Commonwealth money going towards the rehabilitation of the Nevertire Bogan Road. However, the next 2 priorities have been a large bitumen reseal program and a large gravel resheeting program. And after that, Tyree Road construction, finish our little bit of Tyree Road, but the first 3, hopefully, we'll cross fingers that we can actually get funding for those 3 projects. We have told the Commonwealth there's a chance that it could be 4 times 867, around $3.5 million job out on the Nevertire Bogan Road. But that's subject to that segment 4 and 6 and maybe 8 and 10. But how bad 8 and 10 are will determine how much money we can actually move off towards those gravel resheeting and bitumen reseal proposed projects.
So, I think that'll be a matter when we have no more fundings around. We're in a position to move forward, given we've got the 25% that's required to put into the local roads component if the state government follows through. So that will go to the roads committee, and I think you guys can make some pretty sensible decisions about what the priorities are. Having certainly had a bit of a look around part of the trial at the moment. Councillor McCloskey.
Yeah, just alluding to what the general, through what the general manager said in terms of the grant funding being asked for with regards to a resheeting program. Would that resheeting program be given, well, priority be given to, say, the Old Warren Road altogether, or would it encompass other roads within the Shire that need resheeting?
Other road, but resheeting. Not sheeting.
No, resheeting. Yeah, so you're going to go, given that there hasn't been a resheeting program, well, I can gather in recent times here for the last 3 or 4 years. So the roads have deteriorated by virtue of the fact that that hasn't happened. But there are other roads out there, given that there was an indication the other day that the 400,000 that next year is available of council funds for resheeting could potentially all be spent down on the Old Warren Road. And I believe if that was to be done, we're doing injustice to other roads and other ratepayers that haven't seen that particular type of work being done on their road. And if all of council's money was to be spent down there, I think there would be some angst by the ratepayers on other roads that they're not getting a lick of the pie.
And I think the roads committee will come to some sensible decisions about that, Councillor McCloskey. And just to take a big point, a lot of the resheeting was put off because of the drought conditions that were occurring. Basically, there was no point spending good money out there on something that wasn't going to last. So there was a change of priorities there, certainly. But I believe, as you do, that it needs to be reassessed, and I'm sure we'll come to some sensible decisions when we know where we actually stand financially in terms of going forward with those road projects, resheeting and sealing. Yes, certainly.
Yeah, I think it's appropriate to ask how we go with the flood plan, the damage plan.
My ears must have been burning because I'm looking at it there now. So far, we've provided some advice without a final check by our consultant. We think that the 5.051 million will reduce down to probably about 3.85, because there was some, but we're still checking to see what extra works. That's from March 2021. They're checking to see if there's any extra works that are in the November flood as well, to add to that. But so we think there's approximately $3 million of March 2021. There's another 854,000 we think that is the same thing, but that's been transferred to the November 2021. So that gives us more time to actually go and do it. And they're checking to see whether there's actually any extra works in November that's outside the 3 million and the 854. They did go overboard in some of their costs that they've actually redone to do, but we're still hoping to find some more. So we're of the order of at least, we hope, 3.854 million, 3.9 million.
So, oh, sorry, so essentially, what was doubled up in November of 21 has been taken off
To
March
extend
21.
the time to do it.
Yeah.
Plus some extra works, we think maybe, but they're the experts looking at all the video. And we put in our claim, Darren, we're up to what, 700 and, in the report it says 651, but there's actually more of emergency works November 2021.
I put a claim for 717, but we'll have to take 28,900 of that.
Our contribution,
Yeah.
36,600. Darren, let's hope that's right. The claim that went in was 36,600.
So the question, I guess, is what sort of time frame before we get an answer on what flood damage we will.
Rogan and Gill took them 12 months.
12 months. Okay. Yeah. So it's a while away.
But we're pushing our contract, our consultant, and then who we pushing.
Councillor Kinsey, sorry.
Mr Mayor, with Councillor Whiteley's reports, was referred to where cattle are knocking down sides of the road, bitumen off the side of the road that way. And it was a fair distance, wasn't it? It was, yeah, anyhow. So that piece of road being a council asset, it's pretty well, we should probably be trying to protect that piece of road. But it's obviously only one way to do it, and that's fencing. I'm not sure how the hell you can afford it. But shouldn't there be some sort of an analysis done on the damage we're getting compared to trying to protect? And when the protection is worth a lot more than bloody what we're going to achieve, or we can forget about it. But until that analysis is done, we really don't know that we should be doing it or not. Thank you,
First, I think thank you, Councillor Kinser, I think we note that, but I agree, it's a worthwhile proposition to have a look at. And the next question is that peculiar to the wet weather we've had, or does the same thing happen during the dry time as well? You know, yeah, I can imagine just dusty and then the edge of it comes away as well, so I don't.
Well, knowing that the reason it's happening is because cattle are standing on it and chipping away at it. The reason cattle want to be there in the first place is not to eat, is to sit on the nice warm bitumen.
Yes.
So you're not going to stop them from doing it. So that's just going to keep happening. But I think the wet weather doesn't help because it gets soft and it breaks away easier. So whatever we do, apart from keeping them off it, we're not going to stop them happening.
Just might make a note of that, engineering services, just in terms of where there is an unfenced road reserve, that we consider how we might preserve the road from damage like that. Councillor Whiteley, just no discussion there. Councillor Whiteley.
Quickly, I forgot to mention that we endorsed to investigate a safety policy, and what Councillor Kinsey was talking about with these cattle on unfenced roads and the dark at night, it should also come under a safety policy.
Thank you. Thank you. Any further comments, questions regarding the Roads Committee meeting? I think we've had a fair discussion on that one. Anything further before I put that? Nothing further, put that, all those in favour? Against? Carried. Moving on to the meeting of the Mannix Committee held on the 14th of June. Someone has to move those minutes from that meeting. Councillor Whiteley, second. Councillor Walker. Councillor Whiteley.
I commend the minutes to the meeting and ask for any comment from the General Manager of the person.
Mr Mayor, one positive thing of each, the Divisional Manager of Finance Administration, we've been paid our 50% for our 50% of 1.355 million by the Commonwealth for our local roads and community infrastructure phase 3 work schedule. Work schedule shows that the major part of that 1.355 million is the 867,000 contribution to the Nevertire Road. We're probably in the next few months we'll go and finish off anything that relates to certainly by September or October. I think the engineers are programming work for that final little bit on the old Warren Road because there's 123,000 contribution. The rest of the stuff is all those contributions to the 125,000 for the solar power, 40,000, the different projects over at the sporting complex, and that comes up with, all that adds up to 1.355 million. So we're happy that we received our 50%. A lot of things are just setting up for next year, and setting the staff up to do their necessary work for next year.
Councillor Bruce.
Yeah, just a comment, just happy to see that some of the positions have been filled in the council. Good to see.
Any further comments, questions regarding the minutes of the Mannix meeting?
Can I ask a question? Excuse me, in the Office of Local Government circulars, the determination of the Local Government Remuneration Tribunal, is that in the Divisional Manager of Finance Administration's section? Is that where that's reported?
No, I've reported it in this business paper, but
Oh, you have,
the
got it.
Divisional Manager of Finance Administration is one page.
Okay.
Yeah. We'll come to that. Anything further on the minutes of the Mannix meeting held on the 14th of June? Councillor Walker.
Sorry about the voice, and I have tested negative. That sounds like crap. Sorry. The asset technical officer, is that being filled?
Yes,
What-
someone starts on the 25th of July, we hope.
Okay, good. And it's great with the infrastructure project manager, he seems a very competent, well experienced, and it's great, news. Thank you.
Any further comments, questions regarding the minutes? Being nothing further, we'll put that, all those in favour? Against, carried. Bring on the minutes of the Water Facilities Committee held on the 15th of June. Someone have to move those minutes. Councillor Whiteley, second. Councillor Walker, Councillor Whiteley.
This morning it was, covered a lot of ground, and it's all there in front of you. I commend that to you for a comment, yeah.
I think there are some good notes on in those minutes. I think the important one is that we've successfully come in terms of the construction of a kiosk building / change rooms over at Carter Oval, and we've gone, I think, within budget and within the sort of facilities that we want to have built over there. So we'll be interested to see what comes back in terms of planning for that building, and that will be reported and discussed with the user groups over there, as well as they're all very happy, and then we'll also have a chance as council to check the final design and the siting in a very specific way of that building at Carter, in terms of we know where it's going. It's just the orientation and how it will fit, and how the storage bays that were proposed were to be over potentially near the works depot might be incorporated as either part of that building or as a separate building that is very close to the kiosk building. So I think that's a good one, in that we're within budget, and that is of course grant funded. So I think we'll end up with the sort of result that we're after there. Councillor Whiteley and then Councillor Brewer.
Just briefly, it was unanimously decided at the committee that Carter Oval precinct will be completely finished before we won't go and use bits of it while other bits were not finished. So I think the general manager indicated that we're talking about the first quarter of next year, and the facility will be open and finished in total.
Councillor Brewer, did you have a comment?
That was exactly that. I was asking the time frame for the building and completion of that. So it's Q1.
Yeah, so the building is designed.
It's actually Q4 at the end of this year, Q1 for the beginning of next year. We're working on an opening cricket match mid-March 2023. The last game of the season kind of will be special. And that's why there's some funding for the Cricket Association to do a special opening.
Something like council the ratepayers.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, golden oldies.
Same thing.
Thank you. Any further comments, questions regarding the minutes of the Sporting Facilities Committee meeting?
One question, sorry.
Certainly, Councillor Brewer, then Councillor Walker.
The skate park, there was a discussion on the seats. Was that a positive discussion or negative? What was that about?
A positive discussion in that there have been some difficulties with parents being too low with the seating that's there in around the shade cells, etc., to be able to actually see their children when they're actually in the deepest part of the bowl. Yeah. So,
I understand, Mr. Mayor, but there've been further discussions.
there's more.
And we've been able to afford a third one that's needed. We put 2 seats in, we know to afford a third one, and we're actually putting another one in, I'll say on the other side, where the real young ones don't go into the bowl, because see, the problem is the real young ones and the real old ones don't go in the bowl because they're dangerous. But where the grandmothers need to sit, a third seat's going to go, and that will happen in the next couple of months.
Thank you. Sorry, someone else had a question? Councillor Walker.
Thanks, Mayor. I'm just wondering, there's a few action checklist items for about drainage and levelling, and I mean, is that going to be a difficult thing to get that right, or?
Drainage at Cargo and the soccer field and the cricket field. I think everything just there's a lot more work to do, because there's irrigation, there's final drainage works in a couple of corners. It's all in hand, Mr. Mayor. It's not just happening, it can't just happen overnight.
Thank you.
The point is, Councillor Walker, that we want it done properly, and as to the point that's been raised by a number of councillors, we want it completed properly before it's actually opened. Not having a half-baked facility to open. It was quite okay to open this skate park and a splash park. That's good, but we want to see now everything else finished before we go in terms of public use of that facility. Any further on the facilities committee? Nothing further to put that. All those in favour? Yes, carried. List of the claims committee held on that same afternoon. Councillor Brewer, you'll have to move that. Second. Councillor Brewer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you, a very late, last-minute plan committee meeting was requested and granted, and thank you to management for being available for that, to clear up some issues we had with the purchase of 2 tractors. They turned out not to be issues at all. It's just very difficult to put into an email, I suppose, the details of a tender outcome. We had tendered for 2 tractors, one as a roadside utility tractor and one to replace an ageing machine at the racecourse. And we got to the bottom of what was going on. A few things come out of that. You'll note that whilst the 2 tractors recommended today are exactly the same machine, they have a different tyre configuration. One has a turf tyres, which makes it slightly more expensive, and the other has normal tractor tyres on it. So that was cleared up. There is some navigation to be done with the delays on machinery and what appears, I guess, to be what it is, carryover funds from year to year for plant replacement, and it's a difficult trip, I guess, to try to track all of that. Really, we've got machines on order, vehicles on order, and I think the manager for Finance and Administration for keeping his finger on the pulse, because it's not an easy one to navigate. So we have within our budget the sufficient funds for this year for 1 tractor. We're pulling another tractor out of next year's budget. The money is essentially there, but these are identified as 2 of the highest priority machines that are required. Some of that is because of the resale value of the tractors that we have will diminish significantly in that time. And some of it is because they're just, like the racecourse tractor is just about at the end of its life. If we keep it any longer, its resale value will be close to 0, so we need to move that one on. So I'd recommend to council to accept the purchase of those 2 John Deere tractors. Wrapped up in all of that were some questions about local contractor content in the tender response, and we've asked that council assist where necessary our local suppliers to become members or to tender through the Tenderlink process, because it wasn't as well populated by local suppliers as we had hoped. As it turns out, a local supplier will be awarded the contract if the council agrees to it today. But some of the other local contractors weren't, and that's really a function of their either understanding or inability or perception of the difficulty of that process. So we want some help provided to those if they reach out. The Mount Foster Quarry is being investigated to, not investigated, we're investigating increasing the licence to allow blasting up there, and there has been some interest from outside quarry companies, if you like, in that. So we're looking into that to see what we need to do to get to that. So it'll still take some time, but it's looking favourable at the moment. Not for us to run the quarry, but to go through a third party. The extended flexible working hours, this was an information only section for us, because extended working hours is an operational and a council matter, not really one that we control around this in this chamber. So that's been offered. Extended flexible working hours has been offered to council staff in light of a expectation of a favourable outcome from our flood remuneration, and that's in the hands of the General Manager right now. And I urge anyone who has any questions about that to speak to the General Manager offline, but most of those things are really operational matters and not anything to do with us as such. It's an information thing only. Anyway, any questions on any of that?
Is there any questions on the Planning Committee minutes? Councillor Derrick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It says change Hutchinson to Hutchin. It's Hutchin with this, please.
Thank you, Councillor Derrick, for that. Councillor Walker.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's just a question, I suppose, to Councillor Brewer about the quarry. Does that mean that if it's run by a third party, that anything that's blasted for use is have to be bought by Warren Shire Council?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the simple answer to that is when council enter into an agreement with whoever takes on that blasting and crushing contract, as part of that contract, we will have access to a parcel of crushed material. So, and that'll be for negotiation down the track, but we will ensure that we have access to some of the material that's crushed in there as well. So not necessarily, we will have access to buy it at a, it'll be at a convenient rate, but we will definitely have access to that material. And, and whatever that is, it's still going to be much cheaper than us doing it ourselves in terms of the risk that it poses to us.
Councillor Walker, I think we need to step back a fraction. We need to be speaking with the EPA for a start before we actually even go towards any commercial arrangement. So the first thing is to find out whether we have the ability to continue the licence that we have and where exactly that licence sits, and whether then we have the ability to move forward with it. So really it's in with the EPA first before we go any further. So that'll be the first part of this discussion that comes back to council.
It's really, Mr. Mayor.
There would be a cost associated with July and how it all works too. So
Yeah, it's really, Mr. Mayor.
We'll wait and see with this.
Blasting and crushing is no longer one of our core competencies, so we need to outsource it, but we need to do a feasibility study on whether it's actually worthwhile, and so all those negotiations are down the track, so it's better to do that.
Okay.
That'll be kept in mind. We'll need to have access to it, or there's no point us doing it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments, questions with the Planning Committee? Councillor Kennedy.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I'm just wondering this tender link thing. I'm just wondering, what does it actually cost council to be involved in this tender link?
We're talking about
It's vendor panel.
For a start, I'm
sorry.
This is vendor panel.
Vendor panel.
Yeah, of course. Okay. Sorry.
Probably about $5,000 a year.
Right, for all the tenders that we put out.
So what the idea is, Councillor Kinsey, it goes out and there can be no question of any conflict with councillors because they all come in and they can only be opened at the one time. It's not as though a tender comes in and someone opens it and then goes to a competitor and says, oh, maybe if you did this, you might get the tender, you might get the thing. So quite frankly, it's a protection device for council and councillors, but it also makes it available to everyone. And in my view, if Hutchins and Pearce can navigate their way through the vendor panel, then I don't quite understand that other commercial operators can't find their way through the same facility. And the fact that we've been advertising for 2 and 3 years to help people to get on board with vendor panel, because that's the way we're going to do business. We need to be transparent. The fact that they haven't seen fit to do that, I think the ball, without being unkind, is very much in their court. Councillor Kinsey?
I totally agree with you. I'd really like to know why they don't want to do it. What's the reason? There must be a reason.
Now, the two who are missing, one of them is now on there, and the second one, I'll be talking to the person who owns the business to make sure that they're going to get on there as soon as possible. Because we do want all the locals, because there are actually some gear, at least one of those locals we voluntarily like, Wellandra, and bought for 40 years.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments, questions regarding the planning commission in this meeting? Nothing further. We'll put that all those in favour, against, carried. Moving on to reports of the delegates. And the first of those leading the meeting will be Councillor Ray, Macquarie County Council. Councillor Kinsey, happy to move that. Second, Councillor Walker. Councillor Kinsey.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, the last meeting of the Castle Road was held at Lightning Ridge. And the reason for that was normally held at Canberra. The reason it was held at Lightning Ridge was a Hudson Pair Task Force meeting there. And that's about, they just had a big talk fest about 7 or 8 different government groups. And anyhow, try not to be derogative, but so we went to that to actually view what was going on and to have our input into it. It looked like nothing really changed in that department. There was one group in particular, the Lands Department. They've actually started to say, well, there should be stuff done. Well, in my previous life, they were one of the groups that didn't want things done. So, must be changing personnel. But anyhow, on the positive side, it seems to be that the insects that they've got to have a crack at this Hudson Pear, it's working, provided the Hudson Pear's in a fairly big clump. That's a bit negative too, but anyhow, these things are having a crack at it in the big clumps. But when they're scattered around the countryside, the bugs don't get at it, so it's not working there. The other part about it was they seem to reckon they've got an insect that will have a go at African Vauxhall. And I think that'll be a bit of a bonus to the Warren Shire if that can be achieved. We actually decided that the financing, we were going to take 0.7%, which I thought was a very negative thing to do. My main expenses is labour, fuel and chemicals. Well, that stuff didn't go up 0.7%. So anyhow, we're on the backward foot there. But we do have funds sitting around $1 million or whatever, and they're going to start burning that up. Well, I think that's very negative as well. I think that's about it that I can be saying to them, and I'm open for questions.
Thank you, Councillor. I wonder if you might offer Warren Shiloh on there if there is a trial to be done on African black boxline.
I've already had one.
You've offered that?
Yep.
I think it would be a very...
I've got about 3 candidates who want to be involved.
I think you might have a fair queue, Councillor.
I think so. Yeah.
Thank you for that. That's good. I think we want to be at the front of these things, and if it's an opportunity, we grab it. Yeah. So thank you for that. Excellent. Anything further on the Councillor Raymond, events of the Councillor Raymond, Warwick County Council? We'll come to your matter, certainly soon, Councillor Will. Anything further on those minutes? Be nothing further, we'll put that, all those in favour, against, carried. Moving on to the minutes of the Country Care Association Rural Health Forum, which was held the day of our last council meeting. That was attended by the general manager. Someone happy to move those minutes? Councillor Walker and Councillor Kingsley. Councillor Walker.
It'd be very curious, maybe very interesting to hear the report on that by the manager, if he would like.
Some very good quality speakers at the forum, but in the end, they trying to come up with between 100, it was very well attended. Look at the size of those delegates to try to come up with a reasonable process to go forward to actually to try to for positive, and it's called positive change. You have a look at page 5. A lot of that input actually came from the Chief Executive Officer from the Rural Doctors Network, New South Wales, the guy at the bottom, say page 4. I think there's in the next minutes, there's a small little task force actually trying to work on what can happen between those 1 to 15. They're all trying to keep a positive relationship with the Minister for Health and the Minister for Regional Health. They do see as a positive actually having a Minister for Regional Health. But however, we'd like to go back to tours and really work out what our 5 priorities are for Warren Shire. We think we've had a good go at that. And with WAC, try to progress our top 4 or 5 priorities, which are pretty close to our submissions that we've ever submitted. We'll be selfish and want Warren Shire health services improved.
Thank you. Any further comments, questions regarding the Rural Health Forum held as part of the country mayor's work? Nothing further. We'll put that all in favour. Against, carried. Moving on to the ordinary meeting of the Country Mayors Association, which was held the next day, which I was able to attend. Councillor White, you happy to move that? Second, Councillor Harris, Councillor Whiteley.
Yeah, I commend this to you and ask the Mayor to comment on his attendance.
The Country Mayors Forum, I think, has become a pretty valuable forum to be part of. Particularly, it gains some credibility in that ministers do attend, and there were 3 ministers here at this meeting, and then the day before attended by Bonnie Taylor as Minister for Regional Health and the opposition spokesman for Regional Health. So it's a forum we need to be part of, I believe. The second part of it, I'll speak to those who did speak there. Minister Toole, Deputy Premier, was very enthusiastic about regional New South Wales, and I think we'll have a pretty good voice for everything rural and regional in the state government, certainly until the next state election. He's enthusiastic, and I think he's a person that we'll be able to talk to. I think that we have the ability to speak with him pretty plainly. He's pretty plain. He wants to see things done. He sees value in rural communities. So I think there'll be continue to be funding that comes out this way for projects, and certainly has a lot of faith in Sam Farraway as Minister for Regional Roads, and he spoke with him a couple of times. So I think that part of it will be something that we'll benefit from. Bernie Tuckerman, Minister for Local Government, spoke. Still of the view that that she is still of the view that joint organisations will function okay. I've heard that one or two that may be functioning satisfactorily at best when you speak to other mayors, but there's a lot that aren't. And I think Urana JO is one that's certainly not functioning well, and as you're aware, we've resigned from that organisation. Where it actually sits in terms of our resignation hasn't been accepted, so where we actually sit is of course a very different story. The Dench, Councillor Derek, you might remember the Dench lady who's the exec, Ali Dench, has been invited to that's the Alliance of Western Councils meeting, which I'll go to on Friday week in Linden, to speak about the JO position, but I don't know whether she's accepted that invitation. I haven't seen the agenda yet, and I'm not aware of whether that's occurring. There are some significant reservations from every council regarding the emergency service levy. We're getting the subsidy we've had for the last 2 years. Major Fund Administration. When that runs out, what sort of budgetary impact that will have on us, and every council is very, very aware of that, and whether there'll be a different sort of funding model for emergency service levy is something that's been worked on, but what the outcome that will be, who really knows. But I think at the moment, local government contributes about 10 or 11% of emergency services, the whole contribution of it. So there's a big breakdown, and we're not a big part of it, but nonetheless it's a significant part of our budget. And when it goes up 50 and 60 grand potentially, we're sort of going to have a significant impact. So have to watch that space. The other one was the treatment of rural fire trucks on our books, and again, every council says to the Auditor General this is, how can we have those books on and be depreciating them when we actually have no control over those trucks at all on those facilities? And so I think there's a lot, there is work being done in that space, but it doesn't make, to me and every other council, any sense. It's something on our books that we have no control over where they're sent, what they're doing, their maintenance. It's a ludicrous position to be in. And like some councils have chosen not to put them as part of their, and got a wrap over the knuckles not to be part of their asset. And so I think that's an ongoing bone of contention, but I think it'd be something that just does have to be dealt with. It's a pretty poor situation in which to be put by the auditors that we're not doing the right thing when it comes to consideration of that asset. And it's not really our asset. And the final politician to speak, the Minister, was Kevin Anderson, the Water Minister. Spoke again about safe and secure country water supplies. I was able to grab him post his presentation and talk to him about our levy and the 1.775 that we will be looking for, and able to brief his offsider on exactly what had happened in that space. In a minute, I'm just going to ask the General Manager to continue this part of the conversation. And the other part was, spoke with him about the possibility of Burrendong Dam being run at 120% capacity, as we've spoken about any number of times. Again, I think it was possibly news to him that it could be done relatively easily, which says nothing about those who sit behind him, but I think we're in a position to further that conversation when we have the time and the ability to do that. So I just might defer to the General Manager regarding my earlier comment about the levy and where that might be going.
So, Mr. Mayor, so there's an understanding. There's two funding regimes for our levy. We've estimated it's a $7.1 million project. 5.325 million of it is Commonwealth funded, but through the state government agency Resilience New South Wales. And the same thing happened in the original application back in 2021, early 2021. And we followed the process that we were advised to follow and got our application to a number of government minister officers to pass on to the Minister for Emergency Services and Resilience, who used to be Minister Elliott. It accidentally was not progress from his office the first time round, if you remember, and now we've been successful with the next round, but it's gone from being 100% funded the year before to be 75% funded. So we need to come up with 1.775 million, and that's what we're working on with the state government to say, guys, we can't afford 1.775 million, you need to help us fund it. Off to the side, we've also made an application to the state government process for at least 5/6 of that 1.775 million, and that's where we're working on that one as well. But senior officers met last 1 or 2 days with executive directors of Resilience New South Wales, and they will be very supportive of following the process if we can show that our application first time round was put in time, whatever process we followed, and that we actually, maybe if we can find some of the instructions that we've received, to get it through to the Minister's office and not through the normal government processes. So hopefully we're going to be able to find that information. We know that we followed the processes that we were instructed to do. We got it in time, but it didn't get to the Minister's information altogether appropriately and to be sent off first time round. So that's what we're working on. We got a positive hearing at staff level, senior staff level, and we just have to prove that information to them, and that will start helping us.
Any further comments and questions regarding the country mayor's meeting? Councillor Walker.
Grants, and I'm not sure, but the Honourable Kevin Anderson, down the bottom it says all this money is available for Crown Reserve Improvement Fund. Well, I know you've done in the past, put in applications. Is there anything that at present
Mr. Mayor, we put in a Crown Reserves grant application that adds to the $300,000 inclusive of GST grant for the irrigation system that we've got out there, and we've asked the Jockey Club to start putting together all the quotations and information for improvement of their facilities underneath the grandstand for the next one.
Councillor Kinsey, then Councillor Whiteley. Councillor Kinsey.
Just thinking on that, Mr. Mayor, the Crown Reserves, never tire halls at Crown Reserve, isn't it? So those, would a place like that be subject to these grants?
Also, if it's a Crown, I think it's a matter of Councillor Kinsey talking to our infrastructure projects people and just seeing what's eligible. If you've got a worthwhile project, I think it's surely it's worthwhile. Yes, but further improvements. It'll be certainly the others will be on the plan.
We're spending $44,000 there of our grant money. Well, there's a beautiful new fence just starting over.
Well, there's 2 all committee members from Nevertire in this room at this present time, so.
Always keep it in mind, Councillor Kinsey, when you see.
Right,
Man, we haven't forgotten.
That's nice of that. Councillor Whiteley.
Mr. Mayor, from reading this, would it be an appropriate comment to say that the country mayor's meeting was is more relevant to us than the local government annual conference? And whilst we spent a fair bit of time and lobbying ministers and doing other things at the local government conference our resources, could be more better spent at this.
Councillor Whiteley, to be politically correct, I think we need to support our peak body, which is Local Government New South Wales. But yes, I would be thinking, quite frankly, that the most valuable meeting we go to is the Western Division of Councillors meeting. The second most valuable one we go to is Country Mayors. And the Local Government New South Wales conference is probably of importance, but lesser importance. But I think it's incumbent upon us to support our people. You know, we can't expect Local Government New South Wales to do things in a collective sense for the local government if we don't support them. So, point taken, but I think we prioritise things that get results for us.
I was being a little bit facetious, but yeah, we need to be in at the game at every level. But just reading the minutes here, I commend this Country Mayors system.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything further on the minutes of the Country Mayors meeting? Nothing further. Put that, all those in favour? Against? Carried. Moving on to the meeting, excuse me, minutes of the meeting of the Warren Interagency Support Services. Councillor Derrick, you have to move those. Second. Councillor Miller, Councillor Derrick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So as you can see, all the attendees were via LifeSize. So it's been very helpful to have access for people to join us online. We're starting to see better attendance as a result of that than we have in previous years, when we haven't had the option for online attendance. So participants joining us from Bourke, Newton, and Dubbo, and a lot of the Warren-based agencies actually prefer to join online as well, rather than coming into the meeting room, which is fine. So the update is as per the report, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Councillor Derrick. Any comments, questions, Councillor Derrick, regarding the Interagency Support Services meeting? Councillor Walker.
I know it's come up time and time again, and I don't know if there was any discussion at the meeting about how you get all this information out there to the general public and those that really need it. And I know that the Mayor, Councillor Quigley, asked if we could look into that and see if we can come up with any suggestions or ways around the problem.
Yep, through you, Mr. Mayor, that didn't come to this meeting. I would say that all of the agencies seem to be working very well between each other and reaching out as best they can. And I guess I would ask if there's been any further update from Western New South Wales Health as to their role in putting information out about what's coming from the hospital as well. That was a little while ago, and I'm still seeing things on Facebook about who's coming to the hospital and appointments being available, and I'm just wondering if there's been anything further in that regard at least.
A nice letter to them asking them to organise themselves, please, Mr. Mayor.
I think that's the only.
That's what we did. We hope for their response, both by letter and physically.
Right, thank you.
Thank you.
Any further comments, questions regarding the minutes of the meeting of the Interagency Services? Councillor Walker.
Pretty Mr. Mayor, to ask Councillor Derrick, the issue with the peer navigator, Sarah Ellison, he says they've only got funding until December. She didn't really start till not that. She's been there for a very short time. Are they proposing to maybe, I don't know, because it was a late starting time.
Yes.
But they're going to see the take up of this and then maybe continue it.
Through Mr. Mayor, I would prefer so, but yeah, I don't know anything more than that, and Sarah doesn't.
Has she put out there if she's getting a lot of people coming to see her?
Through Mr. Mayor, she's relatively new in the role, so I think yeah, she's certainly been kept busy. And so
Councillor Walker, I just remind you that all questions should come from there and not directly. Thank you to the councillors. Councillor Dress.
Through you, Mr Mayor, just on that, when they were setting this program up, they said it'll be dependent on how many clients they get, whether this may get further funding over December.
Thank you. Any further comments, questions regarding the Interagency Support Services meeting? Minutes of that meeting. Being nothing further, we'll put that. All those in favour? Against? Carried. We have the minutes of the ordinary meeting of the Mining and Energy Related Councils. Someone has moved those minutes. Councillor Walker. Councillor Kinsey. Councillor Walker.
Thank you. Yeah, I did attend this meeting by Zoom. It was a very interesting meeting and it went for some time, but there was a lot of information that came out of it. Some very interesting questions. But I'll just touch on a few things that had, excuse me. I had Tim McMinn, who's the Director of Hydrogen Hub, Department of Energy and Climate Change. He discussed the setting up of the East Coast Hydrogen Network along the Hume Highway and then the Pacific and New Highways, with, you know, stations, refueling stations for people, well, mainly for heavy vehicles for hydrogen. There was also a presentation from Mick Young, who's the Executive Director of Communities Energy Department. He's the one that's in charge of design delivery of the RESs, the one closest to us being the Orana Regional Energy Renewable Energy Zone. We had a bit of a chat, and that MERV might be able to be a part of the whole process because MERV in the past has done these voluntary planning agreements with landholders that might have transition lines or a solar or a wind project on their country. So MERV's had that experience with these VPAs, so they might be brought into the mix. Greg Lamont, also is the Secretary, he actually asked Mike Young about Warren a few times about the transmission line from Nevertire into Warren and if it was going to have enough capacity into the future. So he's very kindly kept that on the table, and Nick Young said that there'd be another committee set up for discussion about that with smaller councils around RNZs in the future. So we just watch this space and see what happens. So thank you very much.
No, thank you, Councillor Walker. I think the point you make is we need to continue to be involved in this because we have the capacity to have solar farms and we need the ability, then the infrastructure to be able to use that solar power generation capacity to get it in the grid. So thank you for
Yeah, it's good that regular Mott kept that on the table and he got a response and it's something.
Yep, thank you. Any further comments, questions regarding the mining and energy related councils? Nothing further, put that all those in favour, against, carried. Moving on to the policy matters, item 8. First of those being the council and staff interaction policy. Someone happy to move that policy? Councillor Brewer, sorry, Councillor Brewer. Second. Councillor Brewer, Councillor Brewer.
I don't have any comments other than it is a significant change to the previous document that was highlighted to us in May of last year for councillors. I think the General Manager was fairly fresh at the time and forwarded that to the old one to us in an email, but it's something that the previous council had approved earlier, and it has a 4-year review cycle or new terms of council. So it's it doesn't say a whole lot different. It's completely reformatted, however, But I would like to just say that in the signature page somewhere, on here, it does say, minor typographical and grammar amendments. That's probably not accurate, but if you're going to track these documents through history, that probably needs to be significant rework or something like that.
Apologies, we should say second edition.
But otherwise, there's nothing in there that really wasn't in the other previous document. It just is probably slightly more wordy.
Councillors, can I open for discussion one matter that concerns me a little bit? That is in Schedule 1, the authorised staff contacts for councillors. I very much would prefer that the Army contacts between councillors and staff, the General Manager, the Manager of Finance Administration, the Division Manager of Engineering Services, and the Manager of Health and Development. I very much prefer that it doesn't go beyond that, because in my view, the waters get very muddy unless you're talking to the head of the department. I would very much not like information coming from another source, in that those other people that are mentioned there, when that might be at odds or not correct with what the divisional manager is thinking and understands. I think it's too broad ranging.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to hear from the General Manager, who has clearly put this document forward, for his side of that, the reasoning behind having that list. I mean, it makes some sense. I don't disagree with what you're saying, but it makes some sense for the General Manager to delegate some of those questions to senior staff. So, if the General Manager would like to defend the document, I guess, or that list.
It's because that management executive staff members, and that's the management executive, can't help having contact with the councillors, because they actually manage in detail in council committees, most of them council committees, and the protocol behind everything is as if they need to know the process of advice to one councillor needs to be advice to all councillors, and that their department head needs to be fully aware of the information they're providing. The main reason is because the majority of the management and executive members actually have to have dealings with the councillors.
The part that I object to is point 2 in the schedule. Councillors can contact staff listed below about matters that relate to the staff member's area of responsibility. I again reiterate, I think the only person we should be talking to is the divisional manager of each area of council operations, senior management team. I don't believe that we should be contacting anyone else for advice. Then they can ask if they are seeking more information, well, that's appropriate. But I don't believe we should be contacting so many staff members.
I'll make a further comment, if you don't mind.
I know, certainly.
There does seem to be some overlap from what can be discussed and asked of a council employee in a committee environment. And I think if I hear the General Manager correctly, it appears to be alluding to the fact that you may need to follow up with those council members outside of committee. And I think we can be more specific about inside and outside of committee for those questions. That's the only time that I think there would be those direct requests of council staff. Most of the other in recent times anyway, that I can remember, most of those, contacts with council staff are via information sent to us from the general manager. So we can go back to the general manager for most of those things. So yeah, I'm open for discussion on it. You clearly have a strong position on that. So maybe we need to rethink this before we put this to the council to work out where we should stand.
I just got the Councillor Kinsey and then Councillor White, you were commenting. Councillor Kinsey, sorry then.
Well, for my 2 votes worth, Mr Mayor, I believe it should be, any comments that we have should go directly to the general manager. He delegates it from there. We shouldn't have anything to do with anybody else as far as I'm concerned. Thank you.
Yeah. That would, I was coming to a middle ground, Councillor Kinsey, but yeah, look, I actually agree. If we were hard line, I would tend to agree with that.
Let me know what the rules are.
Yeah.
But Mr Mayor, with the permission of the mover and the second, you just say with Schedule 1, this be amended to the senior management team. The senior management team is a smaller team, meaning the 4 of us, plus my executive assistant, because she has to kind of manage us as well. The executive assistant has to talk to the whole lot of you. And that's why she's in the senior management team as well as in managers. So if you want to say with the Schedule 1 list to be amended to the senior management team, there's 5 of us.
I'll listen to Councillor Whiteley as a comment first and
Mr. Mayor, and to your comment, Mr. Mayor, yeah, I see where you're coming from, but I'm also, all of us by now, those that are new to council and those that have been on council, should be aware of governance process, and whilst making rules are sometimes good, I think it's relying on every one of us elected individuals sitting around here and those that are not here to follow governance process. And there's like General Manager just commented for us talking to Jody, there is certain times where that in committee or out of committee might not be might be appropriate, and sometimes wouldn't be appropriate, but I think the stress is on each of us as an individual to understand the governance process. Yes.
my concern is the other way, that we're getting incorrect information coming back. It's not my concern is not with governance from the council's point of view, approaching someone inappropriately for information. That's not my problem. My problem is that we get conflicting information coming to a councillor from a member of staff who's not the most senior member of staff in that area. And so that becomes then, the councillor goes back to a member of the public and says something that's in fact incorrect. That's my concern. Councillor Whiteley, then I think a comment from Councillor Whiteley.
I appreciate where you're coming from that, but I think that isn't that a managerial responsibility for the GM for his stuff?
What you're doing is probably talking about some previous instances and experiences.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
We are, Mr. Mayor, is what you're really saying on both sides of the equation. I do understand both sides of the equation. I also probably hoping that managers beneath the department heads can manage themselves properly and as well. However, there probably have been over the last, your experiences, some instances that's been a bit disappointing.
And I think it creates, I'm all into risk minimisation, and if we can minimise the risk of bad outcomes, let's do it. quite adamant about that. Councillor Brooke.
Mr Mayor, what is not necessarily clear in this document is the concept of initiating contact or responding. A good example would be the Town Services Manager emailed us last week about the CCTV cameras in the workyard. I asked a question of the Town Services Manager that he sent us the policy and a standard, and it said in there it had training was required and notification, those sorts of things. I asked whether appropriate training had been given to those people who were designated as able to view and didn't get a response. So in that case, I would say that whilst we didn't initiate that contact, if what you're saying comes into power where it's general manager only, then is then the Town Services Manager in breach of that by sending that information to us, or where's the line drawn on that? Because we are then seeking information from a senior member of council, not in the leadership group necessarily, but how does that work? So we need to be fairly clear about initiating contact or responding to contact, and I wouldn't like to see those things stop coming, because that's an interesting email and that's an important email as far as I'm concerned. Maybe that should come through the General Manager. That's another matter altogether. But then the General Manager, he's only got so many hours in his day as well. So I don't think we're at the bottom of all of this. So I'd recommend that we don't amend this policy for now and either workshop it or have a further discussion about the document. The existing one was working for now. It's not like we have to shoehorn this in here to get something in place.
Mr Mayor, just for clarification, I was aware that Raymond was actually going to send it, he's trying to manage that project.
I hope so.
Six helps. You get something from, if you get something from any of those things at the moment, most of the time I'm fully aware. But number 6 helps in instances. If you go back to being halfway, is what the Mayor would like to see. If you get something, you get something, the 99 out of 100, you know, it's kind of, the department head or the general manager was aware that so-and-so was providing that to you. Not 100%, but 99 out of 100. You know, so people have to be sometimes quicker, better let everyone know. Yeah, I've got no problem just going back down to SMT, but you know that number 6, if you get someone outside SMT, letting you know that it's actually really been authorised by the general manager or a member of our senior management team to do it.
No problem with that, Mr Mayor. The assumption is that your team are senior enough not to lose their plot. All I'm saying is that why then, you know, in terms of that contact, do I then reply all on that email to let everyone know the question I asked, or do I, you know, that's not going to be covered in any of this. But I just, you know, if we go with just the general manager, then the issue then would be, how do we communicate?
I can't do it anyway.
No. So powers of delegation, the way you manage your staff and the way you recruit your staff is important for that. Don't recruit clowns, and then you won't get ridiculous emails. And hopefully these people are smart enough to control themselves. If they're not, that's another matter altogether.
Councillor, are you happy to amend the policy to include the authorised staff members as being the General Manager, the Manager of Finance Administration, the Manager of Engineering Services, the Manager of Health and Development, and the Executive Assistant to the General Manager of the Mayor? You happy to amend?
Yep.
Could a second, happy with that?
Yes.
Yes.
I am.
So, Cassie, on the council interaction policy, in number 2, after policy, with Schedule 1 being amended to only have a general manager, comma, divisional manager, engineering services, and see, that's why I can, yeah. Divisional manager, accidentally twice, actually. No, he's pretty good, he's actually. Divisional manager, finance administration services, comma, manager health and development services, and executive assistant to the mayor and general manager. Everyone understand? And see, that's why, Mr. Mayor, Ms. Burtonshaw was listed as the council support officer too, for that reason.
Councillor Brewer. One final comment. I know that the previous policy had a 4-year review process and or new terms of council. Can we ensure that, I'm just flicking through here now, I'm not sure that's in here for review, but can I add to that to safeguard us from this being an absolutely draconian policy that 4 years, new terms of council, or as required, something along those terms, please, so that if it turns out that this blows up, then we can pull it and review it because we need to.
See an issue with that, the member happy, second, sorry, happy with that as well?
And it'll be, and that the review period be inserted to be either 4 years, new terms of council, or as required.
So I'll have to just, Councillor, just have to have it. I think we need to have that in minutes.
Yes, I think so.
So make it 3 and then the present 3, 4. Then yeah. Just while we're getting that.
So push down and
Sorry, up.
will be new number 3. And that the policy be amended to have a review term of 4 years, comma, new term of council, or as required.
Councillor Walker, while that's been
The policy be amended to have a review term, that the policy be amended.
okay, right. And then I'll take Councillor Walker's comment while Cassie's just putting it on the screen. Councillor Walker.
Yeah, I just, part 7, councillor access to council buildings. I mean, I've done the wrong thing, and I've walked in the back here, and maybe Jody's not around with maybe the GMs and just sort of wandered into the rest of the building. Now, that's an apology on my behalf, because I should get the okay from either Jody or the GM to just wander through.
Like it's really any other time, that's a normal member of the public.
Correct.
So,
So I think that stands. Yeah.
be aware of it, I suppose.
Yeah.
Just look slightly embarrassed to say, can I find someone to?
So Councillor, to bring us back in, Councillor, to bring us back into order,
the mover and the second are happy with those two amendments.
Yes, thank you.
Is there any further discussion before we put the council and staff interaction policy? Nothing further, put that, all those in favour, against, carried. Being 10 o'clock, we might adjourn for our citizenship ceremony, and we've lost our member. Remember? Sorry, Council will adjourn. Thank you, Council. We'll resume the meeting after the great citizenship ceremony and having the federal members of Mark Colton present for that ceremony was certainly a bonus. Moving on with our agenda, we move again to the policy items, item 2, and that being the complaints management policy. I'm happy to move that policy be adopted. Councillor Whiteley, second. Councillor Whiteley.
Those that have read the policy can comment, and I've commended the council.
Thank you. So that will, if the recommendations adopted, will go on public display as per the our last policy.
The only,
Councillor Whiteley.
Mr. Mayor, the only, I see the difference between grievance complaints and notifications. It's obvious as a ratepayer and a councillor, I've just reinforced that a reply, whether it be email or verbal, to the complaintee, even if notwithstanding the whether the complaint was reasonable or not, the reply must be made, either by email or verbal on the telephone within that assured amount of time.
Thank you, Councillor Whiteley. Yes, and I think that pertains to what's it matters to do with council, whether there's a complaint or not. An inquiry, I think we all agree here as councillors that it needs to be responded to immediately, and if not immediately, within 24 hours, so that we at least acknowledge receipt of the information that people are proposing to us, or that there is a problem. Acknowledgement is just courtesy. Can't see any reason for that not occurring. Councillor Brooke.
A couple of comments, please. The first one is paragraph 5. There's text missing in the action table there. It's been cut off. I think some words there. Secondly, with respect to the previous one and this one, the previous policy that we touched on, the communication policy, was not posted on our website. I couldn't find it there. Now, I'm not sure whether, no, I don't think it was, unless I've gone across like
3 years ago.
Yeah, I couldn't find, I had to go back to the previous email that you sent us at the start of your tenure. So can we just make sure that our full suite of policies are available on that website? I might be wrong, I've been wrong before, but can we just check that they are on there, please? And I think that's it. And to the previous point about responses, I think those responses need to be in writing, not verbal, to all complaints. Is that fair? If they're unreasonable, the general manager has the right to refuse action on those, but I think everything must be in writing because these get filed. I thought if I remember correctly, it does say in writing, doesn't it?
Within 10 minutes. Same table. And that's what's missing. Sorry? That's what's missing in the accidentally underneath.
Oh, right, gotcha.
Jody, are you able to look up on the on our website to see actually what's in the within 1 day on page 3 of the existing complaint, the existing policy? It's written acknowledgement.
So, Councillor,
So it is written.
that's covered in that table when you can actually.
So the one that's missing here, Mr Mayor, I think is, it starts with the word councillor, I believe.
Yeah, that's the same. Within 1 day, will be provided with written and
Oh,
that's
okay.
what's written.
Yeah, it's just.
As opposed to verbal, I don't think verbal gets lost.
Yep.
Written is important.
It says within 1 day. In that table, and it's part, and part of it, that table is actually missing, so that makes it unclear, so they're using that.
Gotcha.
Councillor White, did you have a comment, question?
My comment on a reply to a complaint that's to the GM or an individual, I didn't mean by the determination of that complaint, I meant that they immediate response that's been received. I didn't mean that the whole determination be made.
I think we got the intention of what your comment was.
And one further comment, Mr Mayor, if you don't mind, a very quick one. Later on in this document, we talk about customer service policy that's originally was going to be would be matured by July. I think there's an extension to that. The complaints policy and that table should form, in my opinion, part of the KPIs that the customer service policy and those within the customer service section of the council should be judged by.
Again, reasonable, and I think we take that into account when we deal with the customer service policy. Thank you. Are there any further comments regarding the complaints management policy? Nothing further, put that, all those in favour, against, carried. Moving on to the report of the General Manager, first of those being the outstanding report checklist. Someone happy to move that quite comprehensive list? Councillor Kinsey, second, and Councillor Derrick. Councillor Kinsey.
Move for discussion, Mr Mayor.
We've already got a motion, a motion that the information we received and noted. That's what you moved.
Yes. So, received note, but that doesn't preclude you, Councillor Kinsey, from asking some questions as to matters in that report, if there's something that needs further clarification.
I thought, actually, Mr Mayor, seeing you come up with it, I thought we discussed about the mile trees on the side of roads. I believe the last time we had a meeting about all this stuff, did I ask that, what are we doing about it? And if it isn't on this list, which
This is resolutions of the council, Councillor Kinsey. This is resolutions of the council.
yeah. Well, anyhow. Can we put it on there? Is there ways and means to put it on a checklist system?
I don't understand what you're talking about.
The question is mile trees on the sides of the road, potentially a problem in terms of visibility or someone having an accident running into the mile trees. Is that?
That's correct.
Mr. Chairman? So Councillor Kinsey has raised that matter, as I do recall, previously. The question is, where does that fit in terms of just being needing to be actioned? Do we just, when we've had trees near the Tananga Bridge that have needed to be trimmed to allow visibility, Where's that fit in our business paper, or does it?
It doesn't, Mr Mayor, it's been brought up and is listed in the Roads Committee action sheets, where it should be.
Fair enough.
Thank you.
So yes. Or, the other alternative is just being mentioned here, fill out a blue form, and so at least gets on that list of things to do as well with the other way of progressing that council committee. Regarding item 1 of the general manager's report, the action checklist, and these all pertain to resolutions of council as the general manager's just been saying, so the actions relate to things that we've been deciding, that have been decided in the council policy.
Through you, sir, just a couple of questions. Any further advance on the terminal building at the airport?
We're expecting, Mr Mayor, within the next 4 to 5 weeks that a specification and quotation document will be finalised that will include some geotechnical investigation and work, and perhaps even a specification for the footing. And then we're making sure that we're keeping Nigel Clark, who eventually will lease the terminal building, informed. We've told Mr Clark that we are hoping if we can find 3 or 4 people to quote, which we think we may have 3 or 4 people who are prepared to quote, that it won't be done and won't be finished until at least the end of Q1 next year. He's just happy, Mr Mayor, that he's been informed of some sort of progress.
The other question I've asked is that the treatment works, stages of, not the treatment works, the new treatment work, stages of it at the moment?
Expecting the commissioning licence today or tomorrow, but the contract is not available till second or third, maybe the 3rd week of July, to cut everything over and to finish some things, some matters. But EPA were out there yesterday and are happy, and in fact, I believe that we can point the finger at our contractor. The EPA will be using our facility as a good training location for future licence information, because they're very happy with the plant, the soon-to-be commissioned plant. We're waiting on the contractor to seriously come available to help to cut things in, to finalise a few things, and that's probably at least the third week of July.
Councillor McCloskey, yes.
So, a new role was been ordered, delivery,
Just not here yet.
not here, expected delivery.
It should have been 2 weeks ago. Should have been 2 weeks ago.
And reason still not here, no reason from the supplier, or I've been asked.
It was 4 to 6 weeks. We were hoping 4 weeks.
Any further, Councillor McCloskey? Do I move on?
This section.
No, you're right. Thank you, Councillor Van Elbon.
Line start toilet. Do you know when that's going to be started?
Yes. Quotations close on the 14th of July and subject to the funds being right. I would hope that within a month after that, within probably 8 to 12 weeks, we would hope to have a toilet after the 14th of July.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions? Councillor Derrick, I'll just go around the table. Councillor Derrick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just on page 24 of the report, regarding the collection and disposal of accessible rubbish and garbage, at the end of that response action column, it refers to the community engagement plan to be implemented by both contractor and council. just wondering what that might entail and whether that's currently underway. I presume it's
To the manager.
through you, Mr. Mayor. I was speaking with the contractor yesterday. I've also been in contact with our agency in relation to that community engagement. So it hasn't started as yet. So it's on the cards, and there will be sufficient time. I'm looking at 6 weeks prior to any changes being made, that the community is informed of those changes.
Well, the summary of this is at the moment, there's no changes. The contractors decided they had no changes to the routine of the previous, the old contractor. And so that will allow a fair amount of, if any changes, the world will be told of any changes appropriately.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. I think you had a question.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I was just wondering about the UMO Waste Management Facility. You've started doing any concrete work out there, given it's nice and dry, really?
Mr. Mayor, the engaged contractor probably is trying to do everyone else's except ours at the moment. The town services manager is on his case.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Councillor Drees.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just wondering this Bundabar Street Warren Centre moving alteration, is that still, I mean, it's on here, it's ongoing, so where are we at? The last engineering manager was doing this, I just wondered where it's up to, is it happening?
No, it's investigation design, and it's way down the list.
Okay, so it's a long way.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor McCloskey.
Yeah, sorry, Mayor, one more question. With regard to the curb and gutter work that's just been undertaken around town, Pitney Parade, Vade and Stevens Place, when the old curb and gutter was pulled out, they ripped out a irrigation line that was along the back of the curb. Reinstatement of the back of the curb was undertaken 2 weeks ago today. The irrigation line is still sitting above the ground. Hasn't been put back in.
It's Baden's, isn't it?
Yes.
What number is he?
I'm 19, so I don't know whether he's 17 or 21.
21, I think he is.
Yeah, but his irrigation line hasn't been replaced, and his mailbox has not been replaced.
Thank you.
And he's had a blue in for it for some time.
The manager in charge has been Cook for the last couple of weeks, so it's probably waiting on him to see. Thank you.
Councillor Walker.
Thanks, Mayor. I'm just wondering, it's about the two building at the airport. I keep reading about the foundations. Is there a decision made if it's going to be slab or screw piles?
I see you doing some
There's certainly something in between, at least something in between. We're taking some advice from Barnsons, who are making sure that it's well and truly appropriate.
Yeah, I just,
Yep.
we're very mindful
how
of everything.
it's come up to my mind when we talk about this. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Councillor McCloskey.
Through you, sir, again, Mr. Mayor. With regards to the terminal building, given we're doing this investigation work now for the pending building, why wasn't this investigation work done back way when and be on hand now for the building to proceed near future? Now, why are we doing this when this has been on the table for 12 months?
Thanks, Mr. I'll take that on.
Also, I think Councillor McCloskey might have a view on that in private.
Certainly happening now, Mr.
Yeah,
Mayor.
exactly.
Within reason, there are a number of projects that the engineering department and myself are attempting to progress within reason. And I'm very pleased that, and everyone will be very pleased to have someone else help from about the 18th of July onwards.
Thank you. Councillor Whiteley.
Just asking, Mr Mayor, most of us were at the show, taking public input, and there was an input about, fire hydrants and stuff. Is it appropriate to ask about this now?
Councillor Services. Report. Councillor.
Yeah. The question I had, post the roads meeting, there was an inspection, conference, sorry, is what I mean, the Sydney one. Post that, some inspection of excavators was the end result. I know we're watching, online to see how that progressed with one particular machine. Was there any success there or otherwise?
Get through, Mr. Mayor. We are in the process of looking at 2 excavators. The one that we bid for was a Cobelco, and the bid did not meet the reserve price, so pretty much the bid failed. So we are in the process of negotiating the owner directly to get that machine. It was assessed by a mechanic earlier this week, and it looks alright. And we are looking at a second machine that we had a look at while we were in Sydney.
The dosing.
The dosing, yeah. It's a Korean made. It looked good, but we are engaging a mechanic to have a look at it either today or tomorrow. And then we'll have a decision probably by end of tomorrow or Monday about which machine to go for. So the Cobelco price was 70 grand plus GST, and the other one, Tucson, was 57,500 plus GST. So subject to mechanical assessment, we'll make a decision.
Thank you.
That's all right, Mr. Beacon. I'm talking with regard to the Cobelco. That the Cobelco was the one with the forestry grab and saw on the side of it. Yes.
Thank you for that. Councillor, you've now done on item 1 a number of asterisk items. The mover and second, happy to see those deleted from the outstanding reports checklist. Any further comments or questions regarding the outstanding reports checklist of the General Manager's report? Give you a bit of time to get it. There is a lot of information in there, so just to refresh your memories. That's pretty. Being nothing further, councillors? Yes, councillor.
I've just noticed the sports lighting poles are all up.
There's one's up.
Whether that can be asterisks again.
No, not completely. Questioning very soon, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Walker, you got a question?
Sorry, through you, Mr. Thank you. On that issue of the lighting, there was something about it with the neighbours, too much light close to housing. Is that being?
Just been checked again. I believe the light spill is minimal. Part of the design, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, yes. So these guys, professional lighting guys, will be taking in our view, taking all those factors into account. We won't run into the same problem we had with Victoria with light going into the dark sky.
Thanks. The observatory. So, Councillor, with regard to the question, Councillor, I had a look at those lights here the other week. The pole that is right adjacent to the house in the corner of Stafford Street, the third light on it, which is the light furthest towards the railway line, appears to have a shield at the back of it. So instead of it just being if you can imagine a light like that, through, one of them appears to have a shield coming, what appears to be a shield, coming down from the back of it, behind it.
No, thank you. Any further comments, questions regarding item 1 of the General Manager's report? Being nothing further, we'll put that. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Moving on to item 2 of the General Manager's report, and in recognition of Warren being a healthy town,
Friends, Health and Lifestyle, council will be standing while moving the volume 2 of the general manager's report. Someone to move it, Councillor Brewer, you're happy to move that? Thank you. Second, Councillor Walker, Councillor Brewer.
Can we please add in the plant committee meeting that was held on the 15th of the 6th to table 1, please?
Certainly, it can be done.
I then try to explain what it is. Following this, the various committees, delegate meetings. In that, that's correct what you've asked for, Councillor Brewer, but the next part is for meetings that actually aren't on the schedule. The schedule, just saying, the schedule we're talking about is that stuff.
Sure, but with respect to the general manager,
It says, I just said,
meetings held.
meetings held, notwithstanding what you've said, but in normal circumstances, if it's been scheduled, it's not put into there.
Yeah, so we're all on the same page, I believe, Councillor Brewer. Thank you.
Semantics, it just means it'll never be recorded if we don't put it in.
No, that's right.
It could be in next month's.
No, yes, we're correct. You're correct.
So on the schedule is the plant committee that was held on the 15th of June. Okay. So if it's scheduled in the schedule,
Which it wasn't.
none of it, there it is now, it's not listed.
Yep. Yeah.
Thank you. Any further comments, questions regarding item 2 of the general manager's report? Have been the committee delegates meetings held. Thank you, Councillor Walker.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I was just wondering, when Lord Butler came through, what issues might have been brought up with him that day?
On to defer to the general manager, and Councillor Derrick was able to attend as deputy meeting.
3 major items of water supply funding that he was aware of, and we've asked him to follow up with the Premier and et cetera, which collide, chlorine, collide storage, and the telemetry system, both water and sewer. We briefly mentioned, but not by name, some bus route problems. We're leading up to the Minister for Regional Transport and Roads, which is probably the best area. The railway bridge. Talked more about the railway bridge, and he's actually doing some more work about let's fix up the railway bridge. We mentioned to him to follow up in relation to the I'll call it the drug dispensing thing out of the hospital, which he is following up. The Minister for Health's replied to him. It's about the 5 things.
I don't have one as a comment, but yes, I think that's
Pretty close. Yeah.
And through you, Mr Mayor, we did also briefly discuss bus runs and issues around that. Yeah, they were interested to know what the situation was.
Councillor Walker.
No, that's great.
Councillor Drew.
Just to comment on just noting Roy Butler MP is member for Barwon.
Yeah, just looking at myself.
Carol.
Barwon, not Parks, that's Mr.
I had to mention Parks just now.
Just a comment on the clinic over here. When we had that meeting with Mark Spittle and Sharon Kay, they did say that they have those in all towns, not just one. I did comment on that.
Thank you. Any further comments regarding the committee meetings held? Councillor Walker.
Yeah, I was just going to ask Manager of Development and Health about the net waste meeting, and is there any, as it's been brought up, we can do it better out at the tip if there's any funding out there, or this circular economy, they're talking about recycling and this new look. is there any avenue for this council to get involved with any of those things?
Through you, Mr Mayor, unfortunately on that day I had sick children and was unable to attend that meeting.
Thank you. I'll look it up. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments, questions regarding item 2, the general manager's report? Nothing further, we'll put that. All those in favour? Against? Carried. What you presented.
Item 3, the general manager report, what's progress reported, recommendation being that the information received and noted regarding infrastructure projects. Someone having to move that? Councillor Kinsey, second. Councillor McCloskey, Councillor Kinsey.
Recommendation, Mr Mayor.
Comments. The first one, we're welcoming a new manager in the role of infrastructure projects manager starting on what date again? 18th of July. 18th of July, so that'll be a welcome addition to the team. Yeah, exactly. The one that I just again, it's a appears to be one that's slipped through the cracks a little bit in the transition period that we ended and going through. Tennis court, like quotes have been received, but an order needed to be raised and it hadn't been progressed forwards as in the light of Councillor McCloskey. It had been done and it hadn't.
An order had been written, but obviously they hadn't contacted the firm to say, give the order number.
Okay.
The order was dated
You've
21st.
done.
So I emailed that order to them yesterday.
It just hadn't been forwarded. So
Okay.
apologies, not the fault wasn't.
So to the boss of the tennis,
Yes, yeah, no, don't be informed. I know. We just, I think that's, we're just going to find a little bit of a period where we don't,
They haven't been notified that they were going to.
It's successful. Yeah, yeah. Yep. Councillor McCloskey.
Yes, me. Just another one alluding to the airport. The drainage works with respect to the drainage in the airport that then flowing across into Council of Whiteley properly. Progress where that's up to.
still being thought about and subject to having, there's 185,000 there. There's a fair amount of that 185 is for the terminal building. However, we're hoping the last little bit allows the two little drainage structures that are set to go there.
In light of that, has Tim Whiteley been contacted and spoken to with regards to this?
I thought the Whiteleys were aware. I'm not 100% certain whether it's actually the hole in the walls have been filled up.
Get on comment.
Just to help.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, it's not my land, it's Tim's land. Obviously, those don't know Tim's my son. We volunteered to drain it temporarily, and it was done. And it's been reinstated the way it was. That's fine. We also, well, Tim expects some negotiation, a long-term thing, but none of that's been done.
Last little bit, just a minute.
Councillor Cruz.
Just through you, Mr Mayor, just wondering, has there been any more progress on getting these sculptures happening in the pathways that have been made?
Within reason, we're still trying to work out how to install the bird life so people don't hurt themselves on it or damage them. And that's pole structures, and the town services manager and hopefully the new infrastructure projects manager will work that out within the budget.
Just another question. Work started out at the Showground Racecourse with any of the works that are going to be happening. Is it all going to start after the show?
The toilet facility refurbishment is being investigated, perhaps with a different direction of actually, and it's all been part of some investigations with the plumber. The plumbing firm's been doing some investigations for us. There is a chance that, subject to working out whether it can be afforded, that a very large toilet shower block will be built and some other things perhaps half demolished or not used as toilet facilities or only opened up as toilet facilities. And this is all going to be subject to a report to the Showground Racecourse Committee. There actually may be a cheaper version to actually set up and using all the funds that we've got for septic, sewer, pump systems, and that's still trying to be worked out, to actually have one complete large facility instead of refurbishing the several, plus the extra 54,000 that we've got. That's being investigated to see whether, because what we have discovered, we knew underneath the ladies that the earthenware pipes is the main real problem. There's a chance we can't do anything about that. And the second part of the equation that help people to start thinking in a different direction, the earthenware pipes under the men's males may be almost as bad in condition. It is almost over 50 years old, and that's what happens in the country. However, there are people investigating to see which direction it can go. Practically, that may be helpful. With other things happening all around, you still may be able to use some of the facilities before they're half demolished.
Thank you.
Councillor Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just wondering about the horse arena with the wet patches, if there's been a development that issue.
We missed that, Mr. Moore.
The horse arena, I think your question, is that what you mean? Yes. Are there any developments? Councillor Walker's speaking of some wetter areas there that may need some attention.
The advice to me has been that they might be just discoloration, and that it is not bubbling up from underneath. There's no pipes that we found when we cut by trench deck, I'll call it, on the roadside. And when we did hydro investigation downwards with special investigative tools, nothing was found. And we have no explanation. We are proceeding as if there is no problem, which we are still trying to work out with our kick rail quota to see whether a concrete path for 2/3 of it, and I'll quickly throw another one, is what should be happening out there right now is the sprinkler system. Concrete path for 2/3 of it may make it more practical and better to then put the kick rail for 2/3 of it on top of the concrete path. And it's only on the annex side that poles the poles have to be dug, and then we dig out behind it to do the 100 to 150 millimetres of pavement and seal in the annex area. So we're still trying to work that out, because what we want to make the kick rail sub part of the project as cheap as possible, and within the budgets that we think we've got. If we do the concrete path after, it may make the kick rail system dearer. And that kick-roll system, we're trying to work out whether we can do 1.3, 1.6, or 2.1 high. 2.1 well and truly stops the horse roll problem.
I think further information will come to the Showground Racecourse Committee for their consideration, and we'll, as a full council, we'll cover it off at a later time in that regard.
Is that sufficient information?
Ample.
The team of and you think, I think the town services manager likes working on pressure. And between Sylvester himself, Darren Clark and Beck Christensen, we're trying to team everything to have an understanding of what's going on, and things are going to be delayed, but we're hoping done better.
That's the light.
Just briefly, Showground as well, I know that on Thursday, some of our wildlife starred on national TV. Is the fencing to tender contract, or I understand there was some feedback from Races New South Wales over Thursday?
Only investigations at the moment.
Further comments, questions regarding item 3, the General Manager's report, the infrastructure projects? Nothing further, we'll put that. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Moving on to item 4, the General Manager's report, determination of local government remuneration tribunal 2022-23. Mover, seconder. Move Councillor Brewer, second Councillor Kinsey. Councillor Brewer.
The recommendation as is, Mr Mayor. I think that I don't have any problems with the 2% increase based on recent inflation data and all the other information that we get bombarded with. I don't have any objections.
Thank you. Any further comments or questions regarding item 4? I think we're acutely aware that none of us are in this position for the financial reward with it. Being a councillor is a real community service, and I thank you all for that. And this is some small compensation for the time that you all put in committees and at these council meetings. So, thank you for that. Anything further on item 4 before we put that? Thank you. Put that, all those in favour? Against? Carried. Moving on to item 5, the General Manager's report.
Mr Mayor, there's a slight change in the recommendation. Item 5, number 2. A2.
Yep, certainly. Thank you. And it is gratifying to actually receive some responses at times in a written form to draft policies. And yeah, so I just need someone with that with 2 added in there. Someone has to move the recommendation. Councillor Derrick, Councillor Walker. Councillor Derrick.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm happy with the recommendation as is. So, 28 days display, a couple of comments coming back, taken on board, and I note down the business paper they've been responded to. So, all very positive. So we can look forward to the community strategic plan for 2035, and then the delivery program, and then the 1-year operational program now taking place and being adopted. Any further comments, questions regarding item 5, regarding the 2035 community plan and the delivery and operational plans? Nothing further, we'll put that. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Item 6, sorry, the draft memorandum of agreement between Council and River Smart Australia. Councillor Derrick, you're happy to move that? Yes.
Second, Councillor Brewer. Councillor Derrick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would say from my point of view that the consultation and discussion around the memorandum of agreement was thoroughly respectful and positive. I think that all parties were satisfied with the document that we have developed. So, very helpful for its recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Derrick. The council directed that the manager, the chairperson of the Economic Development Committee, myself and the general manager meet with 3 representatives of River Smart Australia. We did have a very cordial meeting, as Councillor Derrick alluded to, and came up with an agreement that did suit both parties. And there was very little reason for any sort of dispute in the document. Everyone was very much on the same page, so that was a gratifying point to reach. Councillor Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just, maybe it's in somewhere, it talks about volunteers. I'm wondering if there's a component of training for volunteers in this situation?
There will be, Mr. Mayor, volunteers who are working for us, yes.
Thank you.
Almost treated as if they're an employee.
Thank you. Any further questions on item 6? Sorry, Councillor Derrick.
One, Mr. Mayor, through you, I did read it in here, I'm sure. There was a comment about, just want to be clear about that that we're providing a space in the old Scout Hall for a single desk for the WOW Centre staff. Yes. Yes.
We are in that if the WOW Centre staff were there and able to do some work, they're available potentially to fill that visitor information role in the event that our eventual information tourist promotions development person is busy otherwise. So it was a bit of a twofold.
Yeah,
they would ask for a space, and I think we can get some benefit out of it as well. So, Councillor Walker.
Mr. Mayor, I'm just wondering then, October's mentioned advertising for the position or in-house?
Mr. Mayor, it will be advertised in August for an appointment in October.
Yep.
And we're hoping for the same success that we've had with the last 2 manager positions.
Okay, thanks very much.
Any further comments, questions regarding the draft memorandum of agreement with River Smart Australia? Nothing further, we'll put that all those in favour. Against, carried. Moving on to item 7, dispose of interest, councillors and designated persons. This is annual. Is it annual?
No, this is the extra people. Mr. Mayor. Jody, when do the new ones come out? Very soon, isn't it?
Probably next month.
For everyone again.
Another one. Goodness, okay. Thank you. The blue form. The blue form again, yeah. Right, thank you for that. Sorry, we need someone to do item 7. You have to move, Councillor White. Yeah, and second, Councillor Walker. Yep, Councillor White.
I commend the report to Ms Kelly and Celeste, designated person, in comment.
Thank you. Any further comments, questions regarding item 7? Nothing further, we'll put that, all those in favour. Carried.
So just to start the process 10 a little bit, something went wrong with the computer there. So Whiteley Walker.
Yes. Moving seconder. Yes. No, you've got a pen. We've all got a pen. I didn't even down. What's going on? That's good. Someone did it off. Thank you. We're all going to speak.
Yes, yes.
Item 8, the General Manager's Report, the Local Roads Congress of the PWEA. Recommendation is received, information received no. Someone have to move that. Councillor Whiteley. Second. Councillor Bruce, Councillor Whiteley.
Yeah, the General Manager, Councillor McCloskey himself attended personally. Yeah, I learned a lot. It was good to see some practical engineers in the one room. Sylvester was there. I apologise as well. And yeah, I personally learned a lot, understanding the ins and outs of doing engineering projects in the council space. Any questions? I'm sure either Sylvester or Gary will reply to.
One of them, where Councillor McCloskey and Councillor Whiteley come in, there was a couple of presentations by on the ground local government engineers, and the most interesting one was Kyogle, who have been successful. They've received about 25% of the fixing local bridge money, over $100 million. Because Kyogle has got the greatest number of bridges. I think there is a bridge for every 26 persons who live in Kyogle. That was the magical figure, 26. So they had 106 bridges to replace in their 100 and something million. And the bureaucratic problem of a program that instead of just saying, well, here's your 110 or 120 million dollars, go forth and fix your 106 bridges. Every bridge was treated as an individual project. If there was a variation of $1 on one, so some bridges went under, some bridges went over. So they had to do 106 variation applications for it. It's sent them. I'm pretty upset about it. And I think New South Wales Transport are actually changing the way they're doing things because of the Kyogle example. But we see a reasonable amount of it. We're doing one right now in another project. The variations are ahead of it. That was probably a great presentation that we all fell over backwards because he was down to earth and knew what he was doing, and it's still too much for them.
Mr. Mayor, I back the General Manager's comments up there. He was a very practical guy that worked his way through bureaucracy and, forgive the language, didn't take any garbage. And what they did was also think outside the box. They were looking for semi-qualified people to do a lot of ability, and they lodged into some non-fully qualified engineers out of the university. They thought out of the box, and that has encouraged a lot of those young guys that come out of the university and not there to come and work for them. So there was a lot of learnings besides putting up with the bureaucracy in New South Wales roads.
There was one, and there were several like that that just made the whole day extremely interesting. We queried Wendy Nation a fair amount in relation to road reclassification and review. And the problem is all it takes is one council to say, oh, what a wonderful idea to do the regional roads under something like an RMCC, and then they take that as gospel. And I know of one council that's made that mistake, and we know of at least three or four of our 7 neighbours who have actually, it's one of the reasons why they didn't actually put any application in, because they're very concerned about money going back, roads going back to the state government, and then having to maintain the roads under some sort of RMCC system. A fair amount of duck shoving given in that regard. And at least but now there's actually hopefully a communique that will come out saying that the state government needs to transfer the roads but come up with a much more efficient way to actually just have us maintaining the roads on their behalf in the same fashion that we do with more money.
Councillor Wiley?
Just finalise that, yeah, I think the politicians on both sides were both there. Both the politicians and the engineers and the council are sort of aligned. It seems to me that the bureaucracy in the middle is the one that is causing the headache.
Thank you. Any further comments on the 2022 Local Roads Congress? None further. Put that, all those in favour? Against? Carried. Moving on to the item 9, the Warren Council delegate to the Castlereagh Macquarie County Council. Councillor Brewer, you happy to move that? Thank you. And second, I need a second. The first, Councillor Kinsey. Councillor Brewer, Councillor Kinsey. Sorry, and the General Manager just has a comment, I think, before we start.
Just probably just allow standing the standing orders be not followed, maybe to just really allow if so there's a mover and a second now, but to see if there's any nominations, and you really can, if it's only one or an election, they just be put into the resolution whoever wins. If you want to.
Yes, so we want to move to suspend standing orders. First, Councillor Brewer, Councillor Derrick, suspend standing orders. We'll put that. No discussion, I believe. Put that, all those in favour? Carried. Now, how do you want to proceed then?
Ask for nominations.
The position of the second delegate to the Macquarie, Castlereagh Macquarie County Council.
Can I say the word first?
Yep.
As you can see by the resolution that we've just left behind briefly, I've been on the Castlereagh Macquarie County Council since 2016. We resolved, the meetings used to be in each of the councils in turn. We've only ever had one meeting here, and that was a very long time ago. And we've actually asked in the past for the Castlereagh Macquarie County Council to come and present to Warren Shire Council. They never have. I think it still needs to be done on, you know, so we can ask the questions of, we pay well over $100,000 for it. We've got the right to not only have meetings here from time to time, but ask questions. Most of the meetings are held in Coonamble, and in the course of my work life, I just don't have time to attend them. They're normally short meetings, but it's over an hour travel. The meeting goes for an hour and a half, and then home it just wrecks a whole day. So I just can't do it. I've had to prioritise my time further for that. As a delegate, it would suit someone who is off the land themselves, but it's not necessarily the case. There's plenty of professional information there for any of the delegates who want to take part in this. It's reasonably rewarding, except the fact everything moves so slowly in this organisation. It's painful. The only thing I would say about it is, as a council, we can't afford to do weeds ourselves, so we have to be well represented to make sure that we get a reasonable shake as a council and get value for money for our the money that we pay to the Castlereagh Macquarie County Council. Having said that, it is enshrined in law, so the council can't be disbanded, so it has to go on. So we don't have to necessarily. We should have 2 delegates so there's someone there all the time. And it's an important part of what we have as a council, is to have that Castlereagh Macquarie County Council.
Thank you. So this is Councillor Brewer chooses to resign from his position as one of our delegates to Castlereagh Macquarie County Council. It's appropriate, I think, we call for nominations for someone to fill that vacancy in that position. And that being the case, I will now from the chairman, from the chair, call for nominations for
No, councillor Bruce, don't get too excited. We now call from the chair for nominations to fill the position that will be left vacant. Councillor Bruce.
I would like to nominate Councillor Whiteley for that position.
Councillor Whiteley, will you accept that nomination, sir? That nomination, you only need a nominator, you don't need a seconder for a nomination. DA, correct me if I'm wrong? We can have a second. Okay, in that case, I will look for a second or then, whereas Councillor McCloskey has seconded that. Councillor White, the question is, Councillor White, did you accept that nomination?
Yeah.
Thank you. We'll have to call for further. A fraction premature. Are there any further nominations created by that vacancy on the Castlereagh Macquarie County Council? There being no further nominations, I do declare Councillor Whiteley elected to fill that position. Thank you, Councillor Whiteley. And remiss of me not to thank Councillor Brewer for the time and effort he has spent on that committee and certainly very much helping to head it, in my view, in the right direction. Thank you for that, Councillor.
Leave it there, leave it there. Ladies, leave it there, please. Leave it there. So move, go back into standing orders.
Yes. So those in the two removed to move into standing order with Councillor Brewer and Councillor Derrick. To move to resume meeting procedure. Yes, please. Back. And now, recommendation that council determine this new delegate to the Castlereagh. Yeah, we just moved that.
So back to Councillor Brewer and Councillor Kingsley, moving that Councillor Greg Whiteley be our new delegate to the Castlereagh Macquarie Council.
That's up on the screen there for us. We've resolved that. Is there any further comment, questions, discussion before we put that? Nothing further, put that all over. Oh, sorry, Councillor Kinsey, sorry.
I'd like to formally thank Andrew for his efforts in the past.
Thank you. Much appreciated. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Kinsey. Any further comments, questions regarding item 9, General Manager's report regarding a delegate to the Castlereagh Macquarie County Council? Nothing further, put that all those in favour, against, carried.
Excuse me, Mr Mayor, with respect, I've got a prior appointment I've got to go to, so I'm going to have to leave. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brewer. Apologies. Noted. Moving on to the reports of the Divisional Manager of Finance Administration. First of those, the reconciliation certificate. Someone happy to move item 1, this report. Councillor Bruce. Second, Councillor Kinsey. Councillor Bruce.
Yes, just happy to move the recommendation.
Any further comments, questions regarding, excuse me, item 1, reconciliation certificate? Nothing further, put that all those in favour, against, carried. Item 2, the statement of rates and annual charges. Someone happy to move that item 2 of the main finance administration report. Thank you, Councillor Walker. Second. Councillor Kinsey. Councillor Walker.
Happy to move the recommendation. Thank you.
Any further on item 2, Division Manager of Finance Administration report? Nothing further, put that all those in favour, against, carried. Moving on to the Works Progress report. We note that Councillor Derrick has reported a pecuniary interest in this matter and is now leaving the meeting. Someone to move item 3 of the Divisional Manager of Finance Administration report regarding Works Progress. Thank Councillor Bruce, you move that. Seconder. Councillor Moore, Councillor Bruce.
Just happy with the recommendation, but I had a question. With the Doorways to Open Air Library grant, who will actually be the working group? Is that in-house with council?
We're waiting on the librarian to come back. She's come back last week. Anyway, so we had a Manix meeting and we're looking at the manager of health and development, the town services manager, myself, and Pam, the librarian, but she's done all the work. And then reporting back to the town camp committee on probably more just the type of aiding things like that to make sure it's conducive of what the town improvement. But we also need approval from State Library as well, so we probably have not Cameron, but one of his offsiders on the State Library should be on the working group as well, to make sure that we're not doing all this and then saying, no, not what the grant's for.
Thank you.
We weren't looking at putting in council on the state, no.
No.
Any further comments, questions regarding item 3? Relating to works progress reports? Nothing further, we'll put that. All those in favour, against, carried. And we'll just wait till Councillor Derrick can re-enter the meeting. If you move on to item 4, Division Manager of Finance Administration report, that being the recommendation regarding the 22-23 estimates and fees and charges. These are out on public display for 28 days, and the recommendation is we adopt those fees and charges. So I'm happy to move that. Councillor Kinsey, thank you. Second, Councillor Moore, Councillor Kinsey.
Move the recommendation, Mr. Mayor. Also, Mr. Mayor, I hear ages ago on the news that councils weren't allowed to dispose of dogs anymore. Did that come to pass?
I might be able to, yes, enlighten us.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there has been a legislation change into strongly encouragement for rehoming of dogs, and council needs to demonstrate that we've tried all avenues possible to rehome dogs, and that if a dog is to be euthanized, that we need to demonstrate the reason why that has come about.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anything further on item 4? The adoption of the 2022-23 estimates and the fees of 2022-2023 fees charges. Nothing further, we'll put that. All those in favour? Against, carried. Item 5, the making and levying of rates and fixed charges. Again, someone happy to move that be adopted? Councillor Walker, sorry, motion. Councillor Walker, Councillor Kinsey, Councillor Walker.
She's a big recommendation.
No, she did. No, the general manager suggested it. There you go.
It was a very good move by you, I thought.
So see, we've got along with the recommendations, which is the actual making and fees and charges. Nothing further on. Are there any comments, questions regarding item 5? We're going to making, excuse me, and levying of rates and fixed charges, fixing of charges for 22-23. Nothing further, we'll put that. All those in favour, against, carried. Moving on to the reports of the Division Manager Engineering Service. The first of those being the Works Progress Report regarding roads. Somebody have to move that report. Councillor Whiteley, second. Councillor Bosky, Councillor Whiteley.
I commend the report to you for comment.
Is there anything you'd like to draw to our attention in regard to the work progress report, in terms of roads? Is there anything you've seen there that you need to draw our attention to? Do you believe?
Through Mr. Chair, nothing in particular, but just a comment that we're still being hampered by wet weather. The roads on the surface are drying up well enough. The table rains still having boggy conditions. Otherwise, we are doing our best to make our roads better.
I think in my experience on the road that I've seen, potholes are still a big issue. Our guys come along, fix them. A few weeks later, there'll be some more potholes, different spot, but they're there, and it certainly appears to be a fair sort of issue in my estimation on the sealed roads, that is, of course. Any further on item one? Division of Engineering Services, the roads report. Sorry, Councillor Bosco, wasn't through.
It's all right, Mr. Mayor, through you. Just an observation mathematically. With respect to the patching achievements, if you have a look at it, it's a nominal 1 tonne to 100 litres of bitumen used, but if you go down to Martha Guy Road, it's actually 7.5 tonnes, 1,600 litres. So it's actually 2 to 1 down there. So I don't know whether they've used more bitumen, of which I think it would make a wonderful fatty patch. And so yeah, it's just the thing to do.
I'll probably say that.
Can you see the correlation between the litres and the tonnage?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's not, it's different. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Previous on that,
Just for information. Councillor McCloskey, you can report it to the next council meeting. So that's
Can I say that that's pretty close to 1 day's worth? You never know, that might have filled up and gone the next day outside the day. You never know.
Very good, thank you. Anything further on item one?
Just keeping it light, it was interesting to see the tar patching truck rolled into a hole while they're trying to fill it. I appreciate where Sylvester's coming from. The boys are working under terrific problems at the moment, and this is going to come back and bite us for a long time ahead. We've got the floods. The flood damage is quantifiable, but the non-flood wet damage is very hard to quantify. And it's going to be a serious problem for the next few years.
Mr. Mayor, it's one of the things is all of us need to try to manage our complaints that we're receiving. We can't put all on flood damage. That flood and storm damage is coming. You say just some roads we are just in trouble with, and we can't do much about because of the nature of the beast, what's going on.
Through you, just alluding to that again in terms of roads we're in trouble with. The issue we had with Duffy Road back here in the past, has that been fully resolved, given I was of the understanding a semi-trailer got bogged in the location where the problem was, or is down Duffy Road just recently?
Yeah, you mean the engineering services, not there.
Definitely, Deputy Road, we are still having that same problem. There's still quite a bit of water crossing the road at that point. As indicated earlier, we had put some rock in the area to make it a little better for making of trucks and vehicles to cross. But there's still that problem with water. There's a lot of water.
So access is still restricted or not available through there at the moment?
access by light vehicles is okay, but for heavy trucks, it's a challenge.
Any further on item 1, the works progress report regarding roads? If nothing further, we'll put that. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Moving on to item 2, Division Manager Engineering Services report regarding works progress town services. Someone have to move the information to receive and noted there. Councillor Whiteley, seconded Councillor Walker. Councillor Whiteley.
There'll be a couple of comments on this for sure, but I commend the report to.
Councillor Whiteley, is there anything particularly you wanted to
I
comment on?
understand this is where I should bring up the fire and rescue comments after we've had 2 house fires. And as well as that, there was at least one bill you put in at the council information day at the show, really the same on Glen Street, I think, far end of Glen Street. Obviously we had the bad luck of 2 house fires, but we got ourselves in the media fire and rescue saying that they couldn't find the hydrants, and whether our quality assurance protocols need to be adjusted, that they be checked, or what needs to come from that.
Absolutely. Okay, Councillor Hosky, then Councillor King. Councillor
Through you, sir, again, just enlightening, Councillor White. In our works progress reports, town services with regards to hydrant covers, checks, paint, plus replacement with history, it's got the comment done as required. I believe that should be taken out, and we should have a regular, regimented routine, be it 6 monthly, 12 monthly program. Just like you go and read the meters every 3 months, come January, come July, that month is dedicated to making sure that we're doing what we said we're doing in this report. Because I've actually had to drive around town and try to spot the hydrants where they're actually indicated by virtue of the cat's eye on the road or the yellow painting on the gutter. Some places you can't see the yellow painting because the vegetation's grown over it. Other places you can see the yellow paint, but the hydrant cover itself is covered with grass and whatever. So I think there needs to be a routine maintenance program in terms of making sure we don't get caught with our pants down again.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, take that on, very much take that on board. It's been something that's been drawn to our attention a couple of times now, well, in the last little bit, but we don't need it really. Yeah. House fires.
We need to be proactive in regards to this in terms of what the hydrants mean and are in terms of the scheme of things, as opposed to being reactive.
Yes.
Because reactive in some instances is too late.
Yep. Thank you. Going back to Councillor Kinsey, please.
Now, in regards to this, Mr. Mayor, I'm sure in the past, Libertine had an identification system for every hydrant that there was, and that was council used to go around and check these things. Can't tell you how regularly, but at least it was every second year for sure. They were flushed and checked that they worked. That's in the past, but
Mr. Mayor, we also asked that Fire and Rescue actually do their own little audit as well, if you remember over the years, and they've had too. Because it's just a secondary audit. They might say, it's a claiming night tonight, let's go and check 10 hydrants in an area, and that's a good way to add to us trying to do things too. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Kinsey, sorry, you had a further comment?
with that comment of general managers just said, maybe that's a great thing too, but I think it's up to us to make sure it's done.
I know that the first part is us doing it, and the second part is we can't do everything all at once, but they come from both routes. And that's what used to happen 20 or 30 years ago. Fire and rescue in their training nights just actually go and do exactly that, as well as our people doing.
Yeah, we've dropped the ball.
Thank you. Councillor Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just wondering, is there, I don't know anything about this, but is there a map of where these hydrants are also? On a road, you know, street map or town map?
I can't answer that, but
There may be, but the valves, we've done some valve stuff that we're actually making sure we've got that as well. There should be a hydrant one, but I'm not 100% certain. Must be.
I think it's on, councillors, I think it's on notice to staff that it be followed up through each, Warren, Nevertire and Collide. Collide hasn't got a firefighting system, can't hold us. No,
Warren and Nevertire.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Anything further on item 2 of the account services report? Nothing further. Put that all those in favour? Against? Carried. Moving on to item 3, Vision Manager Engineering Service Report. The works progress report regarding the fleet and the workshop. Someone happy to move that? Second. Councillor Bruce, Councillor Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have a few questions. I was looking at the, excuse me, on the first page with the new 300mm bucket was all to replace the missing one because it was lost.
Yes.
Did it fall off?
Yeah. Yes.
And no one knew where it was?
Yes.
Okay, thank you for that reply.
When we go and slash the highway, our big tractors will probably find it.
So, three examples.
Yes.
It wasn't
People
tied,
are in trouble.
it wasn't tied down, it wasn't secured on the trailer.
No comment.
Right, thank you. I think enough said. Councillor Ross on that one. Is something else, Councillor
Is there just another that I noticed?
The big buckets on an excavator won't be able to fall off.
We've seen the 2 vehicles out of town for radio checks. Heavy vehicles, yeah. One going to Canamble on the 8th, or went to Canamble on the 18th to the 5th. One going to Ningle on the 8th and the 6th.
So the availability is, right?
in the white, by Councillor Whiteley, I think.
I've got to go to double on number.
So you couldn't
To get a spot, to get an RMS spot in, you've got to be at least 4 to 5 months ahead.
That's so, again, 3 years in there, a lot alluding to that in terms of the timeframe, given we know when our vehicles are to be registered, shouldn't we be well in advance booking them in, so we don't, to me, that looks a little bit silly, we're taking plant out of our depot where there's a heavy vehicle inspection station, they haven't inspected.
The other part of the equation, Councillor Poski, would be that we encourage Transport New South Wales to have more regular inspections carried out in Warren. I guess would be the other part of the equation there. But I don't know what the ability, I mean, obviously they're under a fair bit of pressure if you've got to book 4 and 5 months in advance. And I don't know what was Dubbo in a similar situation, Councillor White?
I personally had my pants down and I was 2 months ahead to get it prior to when your assessment is due. I've got to go to Dubbo next month. That's in 2 months ahead. I'm instructed by other guys who've got trucks to be safe. You need 4 months ahead to be booked in. There is a way around it that you can go and get a pink slip to get you another month or so. That creates. You've still got to pay for a new pink slip with a heavy vehicle provider. You're right. You need, when you pay the registration for this year, you need to book in next year.
Thank you for bringing that to our attention. I agree, Councillor Poski did look a bit odd when I look and we've got a heavy vehicle inspection station down there and you go, what happened there? But
enlightened. Thank you. Any further comments, questions regarding the fleet of the workshop? Thank you, Councillor Walker.
Just a quick one, just up above that, P38, is that right, is it called a lusty boat trailer? Yes, lusty.
Yes,
Thank you.
that's the brand, that's a brand.
Might have been.
Lusty low loader.
There you go. Through, Councillor White.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the engineering services, we ascertained that our float is legally carried as either prospective asset that we're purchasing, excavator asset.
Yeah, yes.
Not the big cat.
Yeah, one of the ones you're looking at,
The third one.
The third one is correct.
The two that the management engineering services has just been speaking about, the third one was too substantial for our capabilities for moving. That's correct, yeah. Anything further on item 3 of the works progress report pertaining to the fleet and the workshop? Any further, put that all those in favour? Against carried. Moving on to reports of the major health and development. First of those federal development applications. I think there are a couple in there. Someone have to move the recommendation. Thank you, Councillor Kinsey. Second, Councillor Derrick. Councillor Kinsey.
Just good to see things happening, Mr. Mayor. Move the recommendation.
Thank you. Any further comments, questions regarding item 1, Manager Health and Development Report, development applications? Nothing further, put that all those in favour, against carried. Moving on to item 2, works progress reports, again, Manager Health and Development. Someone happy to move again with the information we received from managers? Councillor Whiteley, Councillor Walker, Councillor Whiteley.
Yeah, I recommend the report to council.
Mr. Mayor, manager, what do you think the timing is to have the improvement of your working gutter? Does it take a couple of weeks? It's probably take a week very quickly. The last one on page 4, it's commenced. We're doing lots of hard work.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the job has now been completed and they're currently removing the scaffolding today. It's going to be stockpiled on site and removed off site on Saturday about 11 a.m.
Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Whiteley.
Yep. Yeah, just a comment on that. There was a massive kids event over there yesterday, and I compliment the contractor on the professionalism that they ran that site with people, that the scaffolding and the way that the site was managed whilst the public, especially children. And I presume it's finished today.
It's going to be one problem and the way we have.
Yes, it's been an ongoing problem, but yeah, absolutely, it's been dealt with exactly. But, sorry?
My last comment with that is that I think we should learn lessons that we do things properly. When this will be the third attempt we've gone to fix that. Hopefully it's right this time.
Absolutely. And, okay, let's put it in perspective. So, Councillor Whiteley, that building was built in 1996. That is the only issue, in my view, we've had with that building. It was built by, at the time, council employees who were Brian Murphy, who I would regard as a superlative operator, and John Stevenson, who did an excellent job in the engineering side of it. And WRL, it was their first big job, constructing the steel frame. Yes, in hindsight, but we've had professional people look at it before, and unfortunately we've been let down by those people. So I think council's done their part, it's just we've been let down by people who didn't really fulfil their obligations and rectifying the problem, so. Yeah, but noted. Thank you. Any further questions, comments regarding item 2? Thank you, councillor Walker.
To the manager, health and development services, it's the animal shelter. It was a discussion if he really did need to create an easement.
Through you, Mr Mayor, I did speak with Department of Crown Lands and also a surveyor, and an easement is not required.
Oh, so you can start going through with this development. Thank you. Mr Mayor, just one more thing.
Certainly, councillor Walker.
It's, I know it's not in here, but it's about the accommodation on the hospital site. Listeners, if you can back up, just sending a letter for the materials.
Yes, Mayor, no, they're following up the request for the information from their end. Yeah. So they have received my request, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything further? Excuse me, on item 2, the Manager Health and Development Report, for its progress. Nothing further, put that, all those in favour, against, carried. There are no notice of motion or questions with notice. The matter of urgency that's listed on the agenda there does pertain to the signing of the council deed regarding 7515, the approximate $2 million to be that into line with the total that we requested of 3.6 something. So this needs to be done as an emergency, hence using that space. Will be something to move, as is per the screen there, the authority will be given to the mayor and the general manager to sign the document, Wine Road Upgrade Final Restart Funding Deed under the seal of council. So Councillor Bruce, you happy to do that? Yep. Second, Councillor Kinsey, Councillor Bruce.
No, just very happy to.
I think that's a good outcome, councillors. We stuck to this for a very long time, saying we need to do it properly. We only have enough money to do the culverts, services manager, and to get this so it's done properly is a good step forward. Thank you for that endorsement. There are no confidential matters, and at 4:25, declare the meeting closed. Thank you.
Say with the